you're at least going to do like some sort of like a pump and dump
It's a
thing.
smash and grab.
Yeah, like you're going to smash and grab on the government, and like, we'll try to catch them. You know, you won't catch them all. Like that's the nature of the smash and grab.
Right.
So you never know when they're coming.
You're trying to... I feel you. Hey, eloquent.
Like some would say that Trump was a smash and grab. So.
Eloquent.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself.
Yo, what's up, Internet? We're the three averagely intelligent dudes, and welcome back to another episode where we talk about dangerous ideas. And today, this is part 2. We started out with Rod's. Rod was dictator of the United States in the first episode.
Amazing episode.
And he had some really good ideas, some really solid ideas, I'm not going to lie. Like, I wouldn't mind. Yes. I would prefer his scenario, hypothetical and all, above what we do now.
Yes,
I don't appreciate you calling me a dictator, but yeah, I feel you.
Well, I mean, it was just...
Lead me to the future, Sensei.
I mean, are you a bad dictator if we enjoyed it? Like, I mean,
I'm not a dictator. In the last episode, I laid out my ideas on how I thought the government would be cool. Today we're going to hear Max.
Right.
Mac is going to formulate his Macist government movement, and he's going to take us down that journey. We're going to live in his
thought bubble.
And don't miss episode 3. Yet to be slated out. It's coming soon.
Yes.
But episode 3, John's turn.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking
forward to it.
I
give you my government.
Yeah. So, I think we're going to get into it. And so, when I thought about this thought experiment of like redrafting the Constitution, coming up with like a new way of operating the government, I thought, okay, well, what problems do I have with the government right now? And I came up with basically 2. The first one is that it's too easy for people that I disagree with to influence the government to make policies that affect me. And second, there's too much taxation that is being poorly spent on things that I disagree with. So not only are they being spent on things that I disagree with, but it's totally inefficient and tons of waste on top of it. And it's like, Jesus Christ. So
hard agree on both of those points.
Right. And so I was like, okay, I like the idea of having the 3. Like, I went back and I reread the Constitution, and I was like, okay, this is what they were thinking. Now, knowing what I know now, if I put myself in their seat then, what would I have come up with? That's kind of how I approached it, sort of. So I didn't really think about transitioning from what we have now to this.
Which was more of my conversation.
Right, which is kind of how Rod took it in the last one. So it's going to be a little bit different. But I tried to think of like, okay, how would I have restructured it so that maybe me in this alternate future would be at a better, like I would prefer it to my government now. So I still like the 3 branches, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. And I basically just changed the way it's structured as far as like where the power lies. So there's actually not really like a federal branch per se. Like there's like no president or anything like that. Like there's no there's nobody that does anything federally all the time. Basically how it works is it starts at the bottom with a municipality. That's the smallest government structure level. So this would be like a township or, just whatever, municipality, just like we define it today.
Yeah,
And then there would be multiple municipalities that make up a county. Multiple counties make up a state. And then the states make up the union together. And basically the way it works is at each level, you would have these committees that are brought together to represent the people. And so, for instance, like in the executive branch, without having like a president, in the executive branch at the municipality level, there's like a mayor, like the guy who is in charge and takes responsibility.
Like a city mayor.
Like a city mayor, exactly. So the city mayor would be directly elected by the people. And then the vice mayor would be the person who got the second most votes out of all of that. Yeah, so whoever came in second in the full election would become the vice mayor
of the city.
And then the mayor would nominate a third representative, and the third representative has to be approved by the vice mayor, and it has to be approved by 2/3 of the constituents in the city, in the municipality. So there's a 3-prong thing. So like there's really 3 mayors technically, but just to spice it up, you have like a mayor, a vice mayor, and then this like extra mayor.
Explain this in layman's terms for me, because it's
Fail
way
safes, just
over
putting
my head.
layers.
So it's more
and
checks and
fail-safes
balances.
checks.
Yeah. So
okay.
like instead of having like there's now what I would refer to as a mayoral committee instead of one mayor. So
Okay.
instead of like
Okay.
one guy being like, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
It's three
Three
different
dudes.
people that
Yes.
all represent different populations within the area that they govern. So everybody's voice is going to be at play in the decision making.
Like a tribunal of elders.
Exactly, like a tribunal of elders. That's a really good example. And so once this composes what I call the mayoral committee. All mayoral decisions must be made in the presence and with the input of all 3 representatives. If no agreement can be reached, the issue will go to a direct vote requiring 2/3 of approval to be passed. So if the mayoral committee can't decide what they're going to do, it just gets turned over to the people, and then everybody who decides to vote, 2/3 of them, whoever's got, you have to get at least 2/3 of whoever votes. So it can't be like, you have to get a super majority of all the votes. You can't do it with just a plurality. Like, he only got 30%, but he got the most out of everything else. It'll just default to not being passed.
Oh, okay.
So like if the bill can't get enough support,
Yeah.
it won't get passed.
Yeah.
So
it's
like
got to be 50.
you have to. It's like basically an opt-in system rather than an opt-out system. So like if you can't get enough people to be enthusiastic about your bill, whether or not they're just not enthusiastic about your bill or just the government in general, you can't get your shit passed, and nothing will happen. So you have to get people.
So people have to be like have to want a problem. Like it has to
be
start
really
from the very
fucking
bottom.
yeah, exactly.
The people got to be out there like busting y'all's ass
to get something done.
Can I get in on this then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Go
So like, but what if there's a individual interest that wants to see things happen or whatever, like
McDonald's.
yeah, McDonald's, like they decide that they have a problem and they start hounding the mayoral committee to do something, and then the
whatever
mayoral
they
committee
do will
is
go
like-
through this process.
yeah, and then the mayoral committee kicks it down to 2/3 of the constituents, and then they hyped and rallied, so then McDonald's is making that choice then,
I mean, if you
or Walmart.
Yeah, I mean, if McDonald's can get out there and convince enough people to vote
Yeah.
for whatever it is this bill that they want to get passed or whatever, then
It's moving.
the people move. Yeah,
Okay.
by all
Cool.
means. In the event that time is of the essence and the mayoral committee cannot be convened, in like an emergency, for instance, the mayor has the right to make unilateral decisions, but that will be reviewed later, and the mayor has one of these per term year in their term.
It's like
So-
it's like in sports where you have like the challenge flag.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so
okay.
So if there's
Yeah, get
really
challenged
an
by-
emergency,
Yep.
if there's really an emergency, and you have to do something quickly without being able to go through the official process,
Yeah.
you can do one of those per term year. So if let's say, for example, the municipality decides to have 4 years for a mayor, then you get 4 to do. One per year. It's like your credit scores. It's not like you can do all 4 in 1 year.
Yeah.
You got to do one each year, and if you don't use it, it doesn't roll over.
But you can use this for anything.
if you
I feel like we need to go to war with Oklahoma.
I'm gonna cash in my genocide chip, please.
well, I mean, whatever you're gonna do, people also have to agree to just follow through with it. So like, you'll still have to enforce it in some way. But I mean, it's given. That's the whole point of it. I don't want to box it in because it's supposed to be there for broad power. But this is to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Okay.
If you do more than one, let's say you do one. There's an emergency. There's a natural disaster, and you have to do something really quickly. You decide to release emergency funds to this relief process.
Yeah.
That's your one for the year. Let's say you have to do something else. It's a real emergency.
Yeah.
When you do it, the second you enact that edict or that little bill, you're now resigned. You've left office.
It took your power away.
It took your power away.
Yeah.
So if it really had to be done, now you're no longer the mayor, and a new election will be drafted up for the next person to come in once your policy is implemented.
I love all of these because it's like they're so fun. It's like this is like you get one orgasm, you got one load, you can
You
bust.
got one little.
You're like, it killed me, you know. Like it just fucking ends your job. Like these fucking, they're so funny. I really like them though. To be honest with you, just to jump in, I like the idea of like you got a superpower, but it kills you.
Yeah.
You know, like you can use it,
superpower.
but you use it too much and it depletes your strength.
Well, because
And then-
the way that I approach it is I made it to where it's so difficult to get anything done at all. If there really is an emergency, I want there to be a way for you to get something enacted. Like, hey, we're going to do this right now. And I think that it also, it's a proper incentive to the right kind of people to be in public service. You know, people who are willing to be like, you know what, I'm going to give up my position because this is what the people need. Like, this is what has to happen right now. This is a full-blown real
Selfless
emergency.
service.
Because if you're gonna make your own
corruption in the
decisions
service.
to make your own profits or whatever, you get to only do 2 of those and then you're out. And then now your power's gone. So how would that be beneficial to you?
But you know how like sometimes you could do a lot of damage really quickly. You know, like
You could.
sometimes you only need one shot to like.
Hey, I'm not saying
like,
that
I'm
this would
thinking
weed out
about
all corruption.
George Bush, you know, like
Yeah.
he used his one to fucking ruin
Not really,
it.
because he also hid away for like 3 weeks when Katrina hit too. He was also that guy. He was on vacation when all of New
I feel
Orleans
like
was underwater.
George Bush was just super smart. We all think he's dumb, but he's really the one who's like, here's what we do. We know they're going to attack. We run a simulation on the same day.
I mean,
you know, he's
this
just got
is-
some like mastermind evil
I'm just
plan.
saying, like,
Listeners, this is what I'll say about
Yeah.
George Bush. We may think he's dumb, but he is rich, and he was the president
yeah,
for 2 full terms.
So get twisted.
So let's,
Put some respect on his name.
he may be dumb, but then what does that make us?
Yeah, right. He know how to
He's
play
doing
the game.
something.
He knows doing something. And
So-
yeah, I'm not saying Bush is a bad guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally have vendetta against him, but
You know.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy. But I am worried about bad guys in that little
Yeah.
system, you know, in the short term, just because.
So at least in this one, bad guys don't last long.
yeah, that's
true.
true.
They can't be like deep
That's
state
true.
in there for 30 years.
So
Like you
just
do your
slide
bad guy
dogging,
shit and you're out.
and you're out of there.
And you're out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tried to
And I
to
feel
make
you,
account for that.
and their hands are pretty much
warm.
tied outside of that too. So it's like,
I mean, yeah. I mean, you only get 2.
yeah.
So I mean, I'm not. And plus,
Yeah, you get one load. You get you get to bust this load.
you're really on
Yeah, then you gotta
the
take a
analogy.
nap.
yeah, he loves it.
Because I just love it. It's like you the second one, you got to go to sleep afterwards. It's like
I just think I just
you
wonder
can't
you would have to set parameters for how deep that broad power goes still.
Well,
Because
I mean,
we're only still talking at like the city level, and I don't know how big the government
we're,
gets.
we're currently in municipalities.
Yeah,
We've yet to
city,
get
so,
to the
I mean at the
counties
city
or
level, I
state.
don't know. There's not much that you can do really to like fuck up the whole city or whatever.
yeah. I mean, I think maybe people in New York might disagree with that.
I mean, I was gonna say the mayor in L.A. he built a $10 million fake housing complex for the homeless. You know, that was like a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Where like the units were more expensive than people that lived in Van Nuys.
Yeah, and it never
And
materialized.
it didn't
for
actually.
a
Yeah,
decade.
there's
So,
not even people in it.
I mean, but LA's still doing all right, you know. So it's like
It's got plenty of money.
Yeah, it's still surviving. You know, they're gonna do the corruption anyway. So
Yeah.
I feel this.
So yeah, like it's really, I think it's impossible to weed out corruption
Yeah.
entirely. So I
True.
tried to take the steps
That's
that
true.
I thought of to like make sure it was as hard as possible and as least profitable as possible too. I didn't really take a look at like making it more difficult to be corrupt per se, but rather like if you're going to act corruptly, it doesn't really pan out for you in the long run.
term,
Like
yeah.
you're at least gonna do like some sort of like a pump and dump.
It's a
thing.
smash and grab.
Yeah, like you're gonna smash and grab
Yeah.
on the government, and like we'll try to catch them. You
Yeah.
know, you won't catch them all. Like
Yeah.
that's the nature of the smash and grab.
Right,
So you never know when they're coming.
Yeah, try and. I know. I feel you. Hey, eloquent.
Like some would say that Trump was a smash
Eloquent.
and grab.
Eloquent.
Yeah.
Continue.
So to continue on, the way that this particular executive branch, if you will, would continue up into the next level of government, which would be a county. And so for any decisions or issues that involve more than one municipality, a county committee shall be convened. This committee is comprised of the mayoral committees within the county, and it shall exceed no more than 15 individual municipalities. So you can have up to 15 municipalities in one county.
Can we start calling municipalities cities?
Cities,
Just,
yeah,
just
sure.
so I can like keep track of it.
Okay.
better, 'cause
Cities,
every time you say
counties,
it,
states,
I'm like, what
federal.
the fuck is a municipality? I'm like, who's a
That's the
municipality?
official government term for a city is a municipal. Like, technically, Las Vegas is a municipality, and we live in North Las Vegas, which is its own municipality and its
Yeah.
own government and city separate from Las Vegas.
Right?
But it's in the greater Las Vegas
Yes.
metro area,
Yeah.
which is how most metro areas are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna call them cities.
We're going to call them cities. So,
Colloquial.
even though we've already been called, it doesn't matter.
Moving on.
Moving on. So, once the or basically, so you can have up to 15 individual municipalities in a one county. You can have only one if you want, like if your whole, like Australia, like your whole country is a continent or whatever. But if you want to add, combine, or remove municipalities from the county, it requires 2/3 approval of the county committee, as well as 2/3 approval of the current and possible constituents within the county. So if you want to add a municipality or a city to your county, you would have to get the city committee, which is basically, or the county committee, which is all the city committees together. They would have to vote.
These
and
are
get
all the
2/3.
mayors.
These are all the
Mayors
mayoral
of the
committees.
of
So
the
each one would have 3 people in it.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those people would travel together to whatever
Make
the
county
county capital is.
Yeah.
And they would convene and they'd be like, all right, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And they'd have to get 2/3 approval to do something.
Like remove one of these.
Right. So so you're going to add one. So you'd have to get 2/3 approval of those people as well as the people that you're going to add. So if the city that's already established and wants to add into your county, you have to bring in their committee.
Is this to stop them from trying to take each other's cities or something?
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
now, like, there's a process if you want to add and remove, but like, not a county can't get so big. A municipality really can't get that much bigger. Like, you can't. You'll see. I've mapped it out in a certain way, but they can be of
we
a
are
certain
in the
level.
weeds.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
go.
deep.
Let's
Like,
go.
this is how I
Let's
tried to
keep
think
going.
about it. Like, I was like,
I'm so
analytically is like how my
Yeah.
brain works.
Yeah,
so.
it's true.
And so basically that's how the county would work. It's basically the exact same thing,
Yeah.
except it's just a higher order level, one level up. And so again, you would have to get 2/3. If you can't agree in the committee, you'd have to get 2/3 of everybody in the county to agree, and then it could get passed. But if not, then nothing's happening. And then same thing for the state. Now, for any decisions or issues that involve or impact more than one county, a state committee gets together. The state must have at least 3 counties, but there's no maximum number of counties that you can have. So you have to have at least 3. All decisions must have 2/3 approval of the counties. If an agreement cannot be reached, it will require 2/3 approval of the constituents, so everybody in the state, like a direct vote.
Are you're approaching this though from is this 1776 while you're making this?
No.
This is 2022.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're using blockchain voting then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Blockchain voting.
Blockchain
For
voting,
money.
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, it's much more structural and not as specific in the minute details.
Well, because I was just thinking, this is a lot of voting. You know what I mean? Like, if everything that involves each level, like, how do you get 2/3 of the state together to make a vote? You know?
That'll be up for the state to figure out.
Yeah, but then, like, what if, like you said, it's FEMA? You know, we need FEMA relief for Louisiana, right?
Well, if
And
it's an emergency, then I put something in there for that.
yeah, that's true.
I'm excited to see how the states interact with the federal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then how many states are there? There's just as many as can be made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. So, like, the process for adding states would be the same as adding cities to counties, if everybody agrees.
Does if all the counties decide they want to be a state, then they can be like, all right, we're a state now.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if you can get it,
Okay.
I didn't necessarily think about how many I would want for, like, the county going up to the state level, like if a county was big enough. But, I mean, that'd have to be a pretty big county because that's 15. You can only have 15 municipalities in
True.
it. So, I mean, and they don't obviously have to be stacked right together. So maybe you encompass a lot of space. But really, what I tried to do was not focus so much on the specific issues or anything. And I focused more on how we would be represented, because I didn't want to, like, instead of thinking like, oh, well, my own personal political leanings would say we do it XYZ, I just thought about it in a way like, okay, well, how would I get it to where the government still seems fair, but less likely to infringe on me personally? Because at the end of the day, I still am not really that interested in the government. But under this system, it kind of requires, like, for a lot of stuff to get done. Like, if you want something from the government, then you're going to have to be participating in it, because if you don't get, and you're going to have to be incentivized to get other people to participate in it, because it's not, I don't have this imaginary idea of like mandated voting, which that would be up to the, basically the legislature is a lot similar to what it is now. Because I don't talk about the legislature, like I just basically wrote out this plan for just the executive branch and the judicial, and the legislature, I basically left it up to them to figure out how they want to do it themselves. And so I tried to make it to where it was like, I tried to spin it to where it was like my idea of the collective communities of America, where it was like all these little sovereign city states basically that can make their own rules and operate how they want to operate, as long as they don't break the rules of the smaller state group that they're in and the bigger federal group that they're in. And at each level, there's less and less rules.
Okay, so then so these committees are more like courts then, more so than they are like, because like you said, then like if my city, I live in Baltimore, Baltimore's just doing their thing.
Right.
We're doing whatever we want to pretty much. And then, because we can make all our own rules within our mayoral committee, right? And then, but like we start making rules and doing things that the next municipality over has having a problem with, we meet at the county level to like settle that.
Right.
And then there's like a 2/3 vote from the county if needed. If the committees can't come to an agreement, then there's just that 2/3 vote is a backup.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of like with the court system in America now, where it's like it gets kicked up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
I'm sure if like there's enough problems and enough gridlock with some certain question, then it would go kind of work its way up the system.
Yep, and that's kind of how I thought about the judicial system too. It's kind of like an off-branching where there's like it's more streamlined, so it's like there's just a first, second, and third court at each level. So the city has a first, second, and third court, and then once it gets through those 3 courts, and if the people want to keep pushing it, it'll go to the county's first court, and then the county has a second and third, all the way up until you would get to the federal third court, which would be effectively the Supreme Court, and then that's where it stops. So it's very similar, but instead of having like 13th Circuit District Court 17, like all these different courts with all these different judges being appointed by all these different people or whatever, like it's just, there's 3 courts at every level. Ride your way up. We're going to figure this shit out now, like quickly, to save everybody's tax money and shit like that. So, and again, like it's basically the same thing at each level. So at the state level, same thing. Everybody come together and they'd hash out what the problem is, like what's up with y'all's
federal level,
on y'all's counties, and then the same thing on the federal level. Yep. Now on the federal level, it gets a little bit different because I thought about, well, once you get to the federal level, you have a lot of people, because you have to think every committee is made up of a subcommittee or a smaller group of people, but the lowest level is 3 people at the city level. So that could be a lot of people once you get to the federal level. If you've got 15 cities in one county, and then you've got all the counties in a state and all the states, that's a lot of fucking people. So in an effort to kind of streamline it, when you get to the federal level, basically each state would elect a sitting mayor from any of its cities to act as a governor with 2/3 approval by the constituents. So a direct, gotta win 2/3 vote to be at the governor.
Of the state.
Right.
Okay.
And if this is just a temporary position, so one guy who's a mayor, like, for example, Eric Garcetti in L.A., he's a mayor. Well, if there's some sort of federal decision that had to be made and he needed to go represent, like, the people of California chose him. Like, okay, we like him, L.A.'s doing great or whatever, we're going to send Mayor Eric Garcetti. If 2 years later there's another thing that has to happen, they would pick a whole new guy. And he comes back, and he would just be mayor of L.A. again. So it only happens, like, you're only the governor while you're convening.
The thing that's interesting about your system is there's so much voting that happens, though. Because we are, like, involved in, like, every process of, like, every movement of the government. And, like,
Well,
You
that's
said
only if
you
they
didn't
can't agree.
want to-
That's only if they can't agree.
That's true.
If they can agree and they're representing you the way you want them to, then you wouldn't necessarily have to have anything go to, because it becomes even harder once you get to the constituent level vote, because then it's 2/3 of everybody, just every person.
That's what I'm saying.
So that's the problem. Is like if you can get it done at the committee, which leads to more compromise.
Well,
you don't
even
want it to
like
go to the constituents.
voting
People
for your
can threaten
governor.
you. You know, if you're in negotiations and you won't sign the bill because you want to get some extra shit out of it.
Yeah, no, they would hurry that along because, like you said, that's the thing I worry the most about. That is like the people who are incentivized to hoard influence or gather influence. It makes it easy for them to do that in this system. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, I mean, I could influence a city. I could influence multiple cities. If we take something like I don't want to keep beating up on McDonald's, but Starbucks. Okay, Starbucks. They have a Starbucks in every city, you know, and I could see that if they decided that they wanted to make whatever coffee beans, you know, free or something.
Oh, here's one. They want to put coffee in your children's schools.
You know what I mean? Whatever. They want to do some whack shit that's gonna help their public interest, and then they've decided they deem it's a problem, right? And they want to. They could just run these campaigns, right? Get these votes, buy these votes, free Starbucks for everybody that votes in favor of this thing.
The new kitty cappuccino in everybody's fucking 8th grade class.
Yeah. And like, so they could vote in their governor or whoever,
executives.
you know what I mean? Executives into the mayor system. And then that's first, second, or 2/3 right there. So if I'm Starve Donald's, you know.
But you forget that some of the
A.
elections along the way have to have 2/3 of the constituent votes.
But you could see how it'd be easy for me to buy 2/3 of the vote in every city and then control the county. And then if I control the county, then I control the state. And if I control the state, you know.
I don't see. I mean, you're talking about having to influence even more and more people. It's an exponential amount of people that you're having to influence at each level.
That's true.
Only when you get to the federal will it reduce down to a single person. But by then, you don't know who they're going to pick.
But you know that there's a lot of corporations that have national influence right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the processes you guys were talking about of corporations running campaigns and going out there and influencing people, like it's all happening right now. Like, none of that's changed at all. So it's
it sure is.
You know, at worst, you could say that my plan didn't look at that enough. So I'm like, hey, fair enough. I didn't really look at that because, again, like the corporations, I didn't look at specifically because they're not involved in the process at all. Like. They're not in the democratic process, like how we actually go about governing. They're not involved. Yeah, right. Exactly. So, they're
the invisible hand.
They'd have to. So I didn't make it to where corporations have no say. It's just that their say goes through the people. So if everybody loves Starbucks, because this is the thing about your example in the Starbucks thing, they'd have to run single campaigns at every level for every person, all the way up the chain. And that's a large investment. So you really only be able to do that if you thought like it might pan out.
Well, actually, no, that's not necessarily true though, right? Because like you said, if I take the state level, I'll take the county level. That's made up of 2/3, that's made up of all the cities, right? They're mayoral committees, 3 people. If I've bought, and then not to mention, like you said, a county could be 3 cities. You know, or something. It could just be small. Whatever. It'd be easy to buy all those cities. And then now I own this. Like, I don't even need the people at that point now because I have the committee. Like, that's a 3-person committee is easy to buy too. And then they could influence all decisions because they could just be like.
But buy them how? Like, I mean, you mean just directly paying them off, which would be illegal? Like, I don't know what you mean.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, influence the vote.
But they don't have any influence of the vote.
Like
the people who get into the election.
Like, okay, my point is if I wanted to run for mayor
and
I'm individually backed,
right?
How hard can I run the campaign for mayor compared to the guy who's sponsored by McDonald's?
McStarbuck Mart.
Well, I mean, really, it would depend on what the what the city that you live in and how they run your elections. Like, I didn't say that your elections would be like, all I said was that it requires this amount of people and the vote. So like if they run it like with your plan where everything's blockchain and they have it to where like all the taxes that are done at the cities, like they have city taxes that go to propping up the election, and they're deciding like this is the people that are going to be, I've left it up to the like the different cities to decide how they're going to go about doing their things. Like basically all I've said is like whenever something has to be done, you have to have a group of people decide. Whenever something has to be done between two entities, you guys have to come together, and you have to just like, I basically just made requirements of each level below, but I don't care how they meet those requirements. If you like, and it's the same thing with the taxes. So there are taxes. Each level of government has more freedom and power to tax you for different things. So at the federal level, they only tax you for defense. Like, well, here I can tell you right here. At the federal level, they have the power to levy taxes on states for defense and foreign relations. Not like foreign interest, but like relation, like diplomatic stuff. Like, you have to fly somebody out somewhere or whatever. Like you have to pay for that. So, but they can only tax a state. They can't tax individual people. The federal government isn't collecting any tax directly from a person. It's only collecting it from states. The federal government has no say in how the state gives that payment of tax to the federal government. Hey, we need this much money from Georgia. We're not going to go down there and be like, all right, Georgia, this is where we need this much money from this amount of your people, this much money. It doesn't say like Georgia will decide how Georgia's going to get you the tax money. And then in Georgia, the counties will decide how the state gets their taxes. And then the cities will decide how. And so at each level, you have more and more freedom to be like, all right, this is how we're going to pay our taxes to the state this year. And then the state will be like, all right, this is what we got from the counties. This is what this is how we're going to pay it to the federal and divvy it up for what we need. And
so the people decide how much tax they want to pay.
Exactly. So at the city level, you might live in a city where they don't pay any taxes and everybody's going to do their own shit. And, you got to pay to use roads or whatever. And then that money will be collected by the city. Somehow, and then that when the county comes knocking, be like, hey man, you got to pay your county tax. City pays the county tax, and they'll be like, oh well, how did you pay this tax? Like,
now
I give you no goddamn money.
I would assume you'd have some sort of equivalent to like a Voting Rights Act or something like that, where it's like each state can construct its own kind of tax basis as long as it doesn't like do something that we deem like predatory, like something that.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously like rights, like there's like not like a bill of rights, like it's I would have already like this is operating under the assumption that without having to need the 120 years to give everybody their freedoms, like this is like already have everybody freedom. I forgot to say that, but that's just an assumption that I already have in my head. So it's like
more so what I meant was like there's no way to like rig within that system to where it's like, okay, well Georgia's going to make its own tax laws that are going to disproportionately affect the people who are not in control, and the people who are in control of the decisions won't be affected as much. Like there would be like, because currently right now we have like the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act or any of these things that we've put into law that say like, okay, you can't do redlining, you can't do these predatory practices, you can't like we'll use this act as to take you to court type thing. And I would assume that.
No, I didn't put any of that in there.
Well,
that
I'm
would
saying
be up
like
to the
in a system though, you would probably want it so that a state can't do something like that.
Certain, like, yeah.
Like if because like just saying like, okay, well the states are gonna figure it out, but if the state figures it out to where, like I said, the people who are making the decision in that state are the ones who are just like completely.
Yeah, like
I think
taking taxing people under an income certain.
This
well,
would
I can't,
be
off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but.
I think what you're referencing is something that I kind of skipped over in my thought process, which is like, what were the terms of agreement when the states came together to form the federal union or whatever? And so I guess that would really just be determined on how they decided. Like, again, I didn't really decide whether or not they could refuse rights to other people. I kind of just left that area blank. Like, if you got to give me representatives, and you got to give me taxes. Other than that, I didn't really fuck around with it as much.
Yeah.
I didn't put like...
It's your job to govern down there.
Right, exactly. Like, you're supposed to do what the people want you to do, and I'm not going to tell those people what they should do. That's just how I look at it. So yeah, I didn't think about it as far as like, oh, well, they all have to allow everybody to vote, or because the 2/3 isn't like, it's counted by everybody. So if you don't count those people, I don't know how you plan to get a 2/3 vote, but
here's what you do when
I'm
you're
sure you think about that.
Here's what you do when you're in power. See, this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is how you get your vote. You make it so it's illegal for all those people you don't want to vote, and then you vote, and you become the majority, and then you subjugate.
No, it's
those
not
people.
it's not a majority of the voters. It's a majority, 2/3 of the constituents. So you don't have to vote, but you have to get 2/3 of people to do anything.
But I'm saying, like, if you
So
control,
you kind of have to get people to vote.
But if you control the system, I'm not trying to pick apart your thing. I'm just saying, like, if you control that system where you have to get 2/3 of the constituents, you just make laws that say, if you do, these constituents can't participate anymore. Whatever it is, like, you find some reason they owe money to the government because of some tax that we decided.
I think,
that they have.
yeah, like if you're saying like they're gonna make like a law like that says that these constituents aren't constituents,
yes,
that's
basically.
not allowed. But again, like I haven't said like if you decide that you don't want these certain people to vote in your process, I haven't said whether or not you can do that. All I've said is that you have to have 2/3 of the people in your area to vote that do. So if you want to get something done,
So if you want to make
you
that law,
and those people take up more than 2/3 of your population. First of all, I don't know how you got into power, but secondly, those people are counted in the amount of numbers that of the people that have to vote. So it's not like a mandatory. I haven't actually said that it's mandatory that everybody has to vote, because if only 2/3 of the amount of people that live in your county voted, that would be enough. But they'd all have to agree, which is the catch. It has to be 2/3, and there has to be a 2/3
That
approval
is a
for
good
it to get
catch. I
passed.
wasn't
And that's the whole
catching
point, is that it makes it almost impossible for
Yeah.
anything to happen at
Yeah.
really high levels that
because you
affect
kept
lots of
using
people.
the word constituents, and I wasn't really like.
A constituent is just a civilian.
Everybody there, so
Yeah.
it's not like
Like
a
a person.
majority. It's not like you need to get 2/3 of the vote. You need to get 2/3 of the population
Of the population,
to
of the
vote,
people to vote.
and you have to get a majority of that 2/3.
Right.
Like, so you have to get a 2/3 majority of the 2/3. Or
No. It has to be the 2/3.
Total population has to agree.
I agree.
Okay, I see.
Yep.
Yeah, so nothing gets done
Right.
at all. Right.
Right.
But then my thing is, because you're kind of doing it from this like start to like brand new, wipe the slate clean. Like I'm confused because I don't know what the basis rules are.
I guess they'd be.
Like where we start, like, and I guess that's what John was saying too about like what are your like afforded rights off top, like what are my protections that this document gives me, because it was supposed to give you a lot of protections too, well, not a lot, but some protections, yeah. Like from my constituents.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
if
no,
I'm a
that's what I'm saying.
constituent
My
of
fellow
this municipality, okay, and you decide in that municipality that I cannot race mix, and then I decide to have a baby with a black girl, and I have a mixed baby, like,
broke the
are
law.
there? I broke the law of this municipality, but you know. Is there no is there no line in the sand essentially? Because like for me, I'm a big line in the sand guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big like no.
Because that's what I'm
slavery.
seeing about this whole system is it's just riddled with corruption. It's just like
No, more so that it can just be like, okay, I get 2/3 of the white supremacists to move to
Well, that's
Kentucky.
what I'm saying,
So now
yeah.
the 2/3 of the Kentucky
Insane.
constituency believes that whites are the master race. So now you create a fucking hot little Kentucky ethno state. And you know, like people tend to
That doesn't
get
pay
together
taxes.
that, you know, yeah, it has its own
Well,
standing
no, there's
army.
punishments for not paying the taxes. Like, the taxes has to be paid. So, and we just don't care how you pay them.
yeah.
But see, until they just say, we're not going to give you taxes anymore, federal government. We have a standing Kentucky army made of farmhand white boys, so come take it.
So the you know,
like,
and that's secession from a union.
Yeah.
That's like a thing that I think any group that decide like, hey, we're together, we're Kentucky, and we've decided to enter into a mutual agreement with
Yeah.
you. I think that Kentucky has the right to exit that mutual agreement. Just like I thought Britain had the right to exit their mutual agreement with Europe. Like I
true.
thought that was a great. I was like, hey, yeah,
It's true.
be your own thing.
And they voted.
And they voted, and they said we're leaving.
Yeah.
And the world didn't explode.
No.
You know, like they didn't even have a war. People just cried
Some
about it on
people were
Twitter.
mad. Yeah,
you know, some people were upset.
Some people were happy.
Some people even thought it was so bad that they moved to other European countries.
Yeah.
And you know, I figure people will have done that too.
Mhm.
You
With
know,
this-
and I think probably in my scenario, if it ran similar with this state of government, maybe there would have been another civil war or whatever, and maybe they would have stayed separated, and then there would have been a whole nother country down in the south or something, or in the east. The east would have been its own country.
So yeah, that's all I was gonna get at. Like, give me some more like your philosophy behind like why you felt this system was like, because you said you didn't want it to be the less bearing, like the least that you had to interact with it, and the least they interacted with you. Like, why this system?
No, this is just like, I literally just reverse engineered how to make these two things go away. How can I come up with a system that makes it hard for people that I disagree with to make things that affect me? Not to make things in general, but just like, so at the municipal, you know, so if I'm at the city level, I imagine that the people that live in my city agree about a lot of shit. Otherwise, it'd be really hard to get anything done in that city. And so that's hard to change unless a lot of people who disagree with those things move into that city. So I've tried to leverage it to where it's like mini democracies, like mini
Ethno-states.
Yeah, sure. If that's what they decide to do.
Well, because like
I mean, you're a white person. Would you decide to live in Kentucky where it's a white person ethno state?
here's no, I
So you would
I
decide
don't
opt
agree
not to go there.
No, let me finish. I don't
Okay.
agree with a system that allows an ethno-state, because to me, in the scenario you're describing, one of the things you want to get rid of is people making decisions that affect you that you don't have any like say in the decision, right? So I've grown up in Kentucky my whole life, right? Been there since day one, fam. We have a farm. We have settled here in 1786, some shit like that. And then all these fucking white supremacists start moving to Kentucky because that's the hot spot where they're really relaxing these race laws. And now all of a sudden, I'm stuck in the goddamn Kentucky ethno state through no fault of my own. I voted. I have the app. I voted in every 2/3 constituent decision in my municipality, but they just overran me with racists. So now here I am, stuck in the goddamn Kentucky ethno state with my mixed baby. You know,
This is basically an argument about how stuck you are.
No.
As far as I'm
That's,
concerned.
no,
Okay.
the
'Cause it's
argument
like,
is the line in the sand. The argument is that if yes, you up to all these certain points, you can affect change on only a state level, but once you start fucking with the natural rights of the humans within your system, then I think it's time for the big daddy federal to say, hey, you know, you can't go you can't do this certain thing.
And I think they would
that
though.
to get
Like,
taken care of.
It's true though. He's got a point though.
If
the rest of the
Kentucky's
county
fucking-
around is like, yo, like y'all are,
Because that would be
fucking
something that
tripping.
would impact you.
Yeah. I
So
would
you
try
can
and
get together.
that.
And I haven't limited onto what counties can do to other counties or counties can do to cities inside their counties.
Yeah, I get
If
that.
you can get the people to come together and be like, yo, we
They're
don't
doing
like
fuck
what's
shit over
happening
there.
over there, and
Yeah.
we're going to change it. We all decided together, all of us.
Wait, so
it
all
was
the
so
so people
egregious
living
that
on
we
the
all
other side of the in a different state on the other side of America, different municipalities and counties and all those things can make a decision that affects your small area.
it would have to connect via. They'd have to take it all the way up the chain.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
that's
at the
what I'm
top
saying.
of the chain where the
So
where the
if you
power
would
is
take like
consolidated.
we want to abolish the ethno states option in this country
Yeah.
altogether, you'd run that case against the ethno statists in Kentucky all the way up the court system to the third court of the federal system, and what the third court of the federal system said, that would be the new. Well, this is what's happening,
So now
just
we
like
have
it is in our Supreme
there's
Court
a-
system.
So there's a federal arm that is going to come and it's
It
kind of
just
like
works. It's just like a root system that works from the ground up rather than like from the top down.
yeah, and I guess there would have to be some federal power that could come in and like enforce these laws.
Yeah, I mean, they have to enforce them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like how they enforce them, I don't know.
Yeah.
How they get people to vote, I don't know. How they pay their tax, and again, even with the line in the sand morality, like I know what I believe, but I haven't tried to set this up in a way. Again, like I didn't try to say this is how it's going to happen because this is how I think it should happen. I just tried to make it to where it's unlikely that I'd find myself in a position where I'd have to willingly put myself somewhere where I live around everybody that disagrees with how I think, for me to end up in situations where I am like this. And so it's like I've basically created a system that's a strong incentive to live amongst people that you agree with so that you're nice to them. That's kind of my overall plan, if you will, because you're more nice to people that you agree with, and there's less friction amongst interactions between people that are more agreeable with each other. And so like, am I saying like that's not gonna breed negative consequences? Like, I sure it will.
Who have like faulty,
right? Yeah, and I've left it up to this system of government to figure out how they're gonna solve those future problems. Just like I think that the founders did for our country. You know, like they couldn't foresee all of the things that we're dealing with now, and how the things that they set up aren't really the best way to deal with them, maybe in our opinions. But again, like that's just what we think. And I don't feel like I have the position to be like, but in my country, we don't let you do things like this. Like, I just don't, like, I don't know. Like, I think that obviously that leaves the door open for like evil people. But I just don't really think that there's that many of them. And I think that every time one has come around, they don't last a very long time.
Hold on. I'm on some Geneva Convention shit where it's like, we just kind of all agree we don't eat each other. Yeah. We don't, like just a few.
I mean, we don't all agree on that though. Some people eat each other.
But I'm saying like the idea being that it's like a Geneva Convention thing. Like that's the concept, is that we all have it's like the 10 Commandments almost. Like we have a starting point. No slavery. We don't eat each other. Like I don't know exactly what my commandments would be.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that I haven't set that up in this system like a priori, like beforehand. Like I left it to them to decide what that's going to be. Whoever it is, the fictional people that live in this society, I've left it to them to decide how they're going to do that. Yeah. Whether or not I disagree.
Because I guess what he's saying is he's not trying to impose any of his own personal beliefs on how the system should work. He's just trying to give the system a way to
and I thought
evenly distribute the power, I guess.
Personally, like, aside from the two things that I had a problem with, like our current government and the way that it operates, I think that when they were when they wrote the Constitution, we've joked about it. They set it up in a way that kind of, like, it really benefited people that happened to be in the position that a lot of the founders found themselves in. You know what I mean? Landowning white men that had influence. Like they set it up in a way that it was very beneficial to them and not as beneficial to other people.
True.
So I tried to make as big a stance, and I think that that's where most of our problems with like the Constitution comes from. As much as we get into like the nitty-gritty about how the government operates is one thing, but I think a lot of people agree, like the fact that they said in their first paper all men are created equal, but in the second paper they said the opposite. They were like, well, except for those black people. Those people are 3/5 of people. And we're not even going to touch women.
Yeah, and then like 12, 13, 14 amendments later, we finally get to the point where it's like, all right, we're all equal.
Yeah, I guess. Like black men, now black men, we'll let them in on it.
Like we said it in the Declaration.
That's like one of the biggest, that's like one of the biggest blights, I think, on the setting up of this country, and the fact that it took over 100 years just to get rid of slavery, let alone give them their full freedoms, and then women included, and all these other, now we've got like the American Disabilities Act, and we try to take care of everybody. Like we try to think of everybody. And so
can I take the opposite side of that though? Like, not that I want to argue for slavery, okay? So just please don't try and pin me in that
I'm not
fucking
necessarily
box,
pro-slavery.
No, I'm just saying, like, but
we're having a dangerous discussion.
It's a dangerous discussion, though. You know what I'm saying? One thing that people tend to forget in the slavery conversation is that goes back to the dawn of humanity, right? Like a group of people, maybe not based on race. It could be based on economics. It could be based on all types of different situations. But the idea that certain people grasp the rights and freedoms of other people and exploit that's happened since like forever, right? Still happens today. And then now you have this country that came from that life, like was built upon that life. Like, let's not get it twisted. Like England, and then they had serfs and shit back in the day and all that shit. You essentially back in the day when a monarchy, your people were your slaves. They weren't like your constituents. Like they didn't vote and shit.
They were your subjects.
Your subjects. They did, which is that's slavery. So anyways, it came from that life to coming here and like trying to grow out of that is my point. You know, it's like trying to take step forward to be like, you know what, it shouldn't be like this. And then realizing and having to wake up to your own egregious mistakes that you're like, but I'm still being like this. Like I haven't broken my like government level generational trauma. Yep. You know what I mean? And then finally do breaking that. Yeah. And then finally do breaking through that and being like, and then creating the finally first like freest country there is, you know, like that has ever been. Yeah, you know, that ever been. And so it's like it finally busts through that, and it sucks that they're always carrying that stain of like, yeah, but you came from that place, but your daddy's daddy was a rapist though, so you suck, you know. It's like, dang.
And the worst part is that everybody's guilty of that.
And it's like everybody came from that same place,
and the whole idea of like slavery being part of a race thing, like. First of all, that's a new thing in terms of slavery history. Slavery being a race-related thing is new because back in the day, before boats and sea travel, you just enslaved the people next to you. They were just like you, Slavs. Actually, that's where the word slaves comes from, is the Slavs in Eastern Europe were slaves to the Western Europeans. And so that's where the actual term slave is derived. So they were like the OG slaves. Yeah. But, you know, everybody's been a slave. Everybody's been a slave holder as far as ethnicities, races, countries, you know, like, well, I don't know, maybe not like the newest country, but old countries, they got slaves. So or at least they had them. So and it sucks in the short modern context of like modern American history, right? Yeah. Like that sucks. But when you take it to this grand scheme of like human evolution as like a world, we're kind of like on the cutting edge of some shit. Yeah, we were on the leading front of getting rid of slavery all over the world after we were one of the only countries to ever have a war to get rid of it in our country.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's the fact that it's so close. It's modern history. It's 150 years ago. Right. So it's like, you know, you look at America as a whole at 250-ish years or whatever, and it's like we went from basing our entire economic structural government on we're enslaving 1/5 of our population and they're going to do all the hard fucking manual labor and we're going to reap all the benefits and subjugate them into nothingness. And then literally only a couple generations later, we're at the point where we're addressing that and saying like, all right, guys, like we recognize we were okay, we did that. Yeah. We slave owned. That's true. Okay. And we made bad laws and we have documents that look like they let people be free, but they really didn't. Yeah. You know, like we really have had to grow out of that in these.
And that is a part of like this conversation.
Yeah. Like, it really is. It shows that like even with the best intentions, all men are created equal. Even with the best intentions, you might end up falling into the trap of slavery.
Yeah. You know? And who among us is a perfect person in our own lives? And so I think, you know, a government is just a collection of people coming together to do something, which is govern. And those people are flawed, so you're always going to have flawed governance. You know, like there's no possible way you'll find something that works.
Government is authority, and authority, people have problems with it.
It's naturally oppressive, you know. But that was because I was going to lean to that before when you were like, you said you don't think that there's that many evil people, and I wanted you to like define what you meant by evil, because I don't think that there's evil people in the world either. I just think there's a lot of self-serving people in the world, right? And that's just by nature, you know. Yeah. And like we talk about, if the government stands as this like service to you, but it's also very easy for it to turn into an oppression on you if somebody decides that they want to use it for their own selfish service, you know. And that's like not why I feel like they're evil. They're just, you know, looking out for number one.
I mean, that's what we're all doing with the government. I mean,
and so I want to make it as difficult to do that as possible.
Right, yeah. At the end of the day, like even I like admit to myself, like I like donating to charities and volunteering my time and stuff like that. But I only do things that I enjoy, you know, like I don't do the things that are like uncomfortable for me. I don't want to make it hard for me to like give back to my community. And I just accept that I have ways that I feel best doing that. And I do those things. And like, you know, as much as I'd like to do more, and I plan to do more as I evolve and grow and stuff and like maybe push my comfort zone, you know, it's just like, I think that in the same way I don't have I think because of the way that I look at politics now, and like it's just so tainted, I have a really negative view of it. And so I don't like to take this, like I want it to be a system where we're all more involved, because then I feel like the more involvement we can get, even if it was in this system that we have now, I feel like a lot of the problems that we have, we wouldn't have. So already I feel like that, so like that's another reason why I tried, because that's something about volunteer work and stuff, like you have to be really committed to start doing that. It's more than just being like, oh yeah, we're going to get a tax on the city so that everybody, even people we don't know or people that don't care about this thing, they'll have to pay money because I think that it's, too hard to do it myself,
right.
Which it is too hard to do it yourself. But don't take the lazy way of trying to force everybody to do the thing that you think you should do. Like, convince them, show them why it's important, share it with them, share your passions and your desires, and be like, look, this is why we need to
and
save
then get
this.
out there and invest
and get out there
in
and fucking do it. And so like I think
about.
that this promotes that as well.
Yeah.
Because you need so many people to get together just to do anything. So it's like
gotta take matters in your own
you gotta take matters in your own hands. Like if there's really something going down, and it's not like emergency level, like the floodwater's coming in right now. But if you know that the floodwater's going to come in 10 years, you have to figure something out. And you have to figure out something that almost everybody in that area feels like, okay, this is something I can, I can't remember what the movie was, but the movie, he said, in a compromise, you don't want anybody to walk away happy from a compromise. Because that makes it seem like you got a worse deal. Like somebody got really good deal. In a compromise, you want everybody to feel just happy enough to walk away. That's it. All parties should walk away being like, that was kind of shit, but it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But right now, some people walk away being like, that was great. And other people are like, I can't live. You know what I mean? Like I can't do anything. Whereas I'm trying to make it to where it's like, everybody's like, man, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but at least the flood's not coming in.
I have a question for your system about, like, I guess I'll say, like, protected, like, minority groups. Like, let's say you had a small religious sect and nobody really likes the religion you practice. They think it's fucking weird. Mm-hmm. And it's small. You're a minority. And the majority, the 2/3 of the rest of the constituents are like, just start imposing restrictions, inhibiting your freedom of the right to practice your religion in some way. As long as it's like, like let's say you have a reasonable one. I wear headdresses in public, and they're like, no.
I can crush this real quick though, because I feel like I got a good gist of this now too though. It's like in Mac's system, like we're allowed to have a Bill of Rights. Like we could enact a Bill of Rights, and I'm sure we would. Because everything you're saying, I would also want. He wants.
I want.
Yeah, religious freedom.
Most of our viewers want. So we would all get together as the 2/3 and probably lay that out flat from the start. Like, all right, look, you're not ethno-stating. We're not going back to racism. We're not like, like we can. He's just saying like on top of that now, if we're like tomorrow though, it's brand new. This never happened before, but Sudan is like starting to get tricky, and we want to go to war with Sudan or something, right? Like. They can't just vote at top and like go to war.
No,
they
I was
would
just
have to,
talking.
Start from the bottom. We'd all have to decide. Like they would have to run a campaign around the country and get all the cities to like go together to the county.
I'm just talking individual freedoms. That's
but like I said, there's no reason to think that there wouldn't be individual freedom.
Yeah, I just haven't set that up beforehand.
He just didn't lay it out in like his.
I didn't give them my freedom, like what I thought people were getting. Like I just like again, like I said, like I came into this thought process thinking like, okay, all the states have come together and they're trying to decide on it's probably just because this isn't like fully thought out, really. I haven't thought about what it would be in the sense of like, what are we going to do about rights? Because a lot of people don't know this, but the way the Constitution was enacted is that they had to run it to all the different states and get them to agree on it, which is why it was written a long time before it was actually ratified. So I imagine that at some point there's going to be some sort of agreement between the states that decide like these are the overarching rules that all states and all parties within the states have to abide by in order to be a fair play member of this hereby union.
I got you. So
I just didn't say what that was going to be.
You established a system where they can establish their own constitution. It's just we don't necessarily in your current version have a Bill of Rights or a constitution that like says like these are like the kind of.
Well, the Bill of Rights you had to add to the Constitution.
He
anyway.
gave us a canvas.
This is just to talk about how the government runs, and that's the same thing that the original Constitution did. And so it's like the original Constitution, they had to come back and say we want to make new things about this now that like we want to make it a law of the land across the whole board that X Y Z. Originally, the founders were just like, look, this is how you're going to elect people to decide what laws are going to be laws. And so that's kind of the same thing I did. Like I was just like, this is how you bring me people. This is what you're allowed to tax people for, and that's it. Like these people make the decisions. They'll decide how much the taxes go, and that's it.
Yeah,
but
and I just think my only little disconnect there is just like I kind of went to this assignment under the like with like life, liberty, and like property, like my natural rights being established. Like okay, like starting from point number 1, my launching point is the American freedoms as I know them that we considered God-given, like those are, okay, that's the launching point. That's my pedestal that I started from. And it's like, I guess that is the same place you started from. It's just not necessarily stated. Like we all have the individual American rights that are kind of granted to us.
Yeah. I didn't,
because without those rights being enumerated to me, my first thought was they're going to infringe on my fucking rights by just creating laws or 2/3, majorities that affect me in some way that take those rights away.
Do that. Like,
I mean, I'm not saying the system right now is the way I would construct it. I'm just saying in a scenario where we're allowed to construct our own system, I would construct one where like that would be my starting point.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like it's not that they like we're doing it now, but there's no system. You have to give up something to live together with all kinds of people anyways. This system is, it's just, now we're just discussing what we're giving up. That's basically what I approach this discussion as. Like, what am I willing to give up to you to live together? Like, that's the discussion that we're talking about, so that we can all live together. And some people are like, well, we want to have these slaves. And those other people were like, no, we're not going to have them. And they had to figure that out. And I mean, sometimes that's with violence. Because, I mean, it's like, I don't imagine that we'll come up with a system that where, well, okay, well, now we're past violence. Or like, oh, well, now we're past conflict at all, And, like, there's absolutely no way that anybody could ever possibly infringe on your rights because, I've laid them out so eloquently and detailed. Like, it does, at the end of the day, it's up to the people to uphold what that piece of paper says. Okay. And so it's like you're not going to get it to where it's like even if you say specifically all the different things, that's what we already tried to do. Not allowed to do. We already tried to do that with the Constitution. And it's like the government does way more than the Constitution lets it, just blatantly. But like we all kind of agree.
But I'm telling you, we would agree. Like in his system, like if Mac's system was enacted today, those freedoms would be in there
because there's not a lot of races.
We're already like
those things are evolving out of us.
Are like totally not with. I'm not with no ethno state shit. I'm not with no like pollution shit. No fucking racism. No police brutality. I'm not with no like corporation like overlords. Anyways, my point is like I think that the rights would be built in there. He just didn't.
And believe
I think he just really wants to hear you say we have rights.
Yeah, because like in a system where those rights aren't enumerated in the sense of like, well, it's like
because I didn't lay that out in mine either.
Let the chips fall where the chips fall.
Let me tell you what I'm saying. I'm saying that if it were up to me, we all have rights. Yeah. But it is not, nor has it ever been up to me. Like, I think that every human has rights, even rights that other countries don't give to their people. I think that they have them, but their country disagrees. And me thinking that they have them does nothing about their country disagreeing with me and saying, like, no. They don't have a right to that. Yeah. We decide whether they do that. And so it's like, yes, if this country that operates under this system didn't protect a lot of the rights that I think you and me agree that we have, I probably wouldn't live here. but I haven't decided what the rights are going to be for this country. I let the people in the country decide what their rights are.
And that's our ultimate disconnect is I would design a system that has kind of like the starting rules rather than designing a system where I just assume that whoever uses this system will know
build the rules
to start with life.
Did we do that with this one?
I don't think we successfully did it. I think we tried, like if we're looking at history, I think we made a document that was like, all right, so first of all, we're all equal. Even though none of us in the, you know what I'm saying, we're equal. They literally put pen to paper and we're like, all men have God-given rights. We're all created equal. We will not have them infringed upon. Now build a government. And in reality, that only applied to white landowners, white male landowners. So yes, we tried to, failing miserably, thinking that, you know, like by just saying it would be true, when in reality it didn't happen for another 200 years.
But that's
because we weren't even.
And no, I'm saying,
and he's
like,
saying his combative is
that's our disconnect. You're saying I would not design a system with those laid in,
from the
and
ground.
I'm saying I would cook that into my bottom layer. It would be a crusty layer.
Like
of
you don't
life,
get to make a
liberty.
choice about this at all. This is what it is.
Exactly. This cannot be taken away or infringed upon in any way, or it voids the transaction.
The whole thing. I feel that 100%. That's it.
And it's just it's just
I
difference of opinion.
What I like about the system is that it does breed a bottom-up government, which seems cool. Like you said, like there's not a lot of like you said, there is no real federal government unless we decide to have one. Like until we deem that it's necessary for us to get federal with it, then. But the idea that the federal government's just churning around all the time, just like acting 24/7, 7 days a week. I'm like, what are you doing up there? And they're like, oh, we're making decisions.
Believe me, we're doing this for you.
Yeah, and I like that part for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, people will talk about it too. They'll be like, I don't know if it's gonna get solved here in Georgia, honey. I think this is gonna go federal. You know, and it's gonna be a big thing because nobody wants it to go federal because it's a big pain in the ass. Every level you go higher, if you can't find an agreement and you got to take it to the next level,
more scrutiny.
Oh my God, like it's gonna be a big pain in the ass. And so that's like the negative incentive to like, you guys better figure this shit out here. You better come to some sort of way to reconcile this disagreement between yourselves.
This is my mom when she was busting on me and my brother fighting, and she's like, you figure it out for yourself, or I'm coming in here and I'm making the decision and nobody's getting the ice cream.
Yep, exactly.
Badass right.
And so, and I mean, like, basically, there's not really much more to it.
That sounds,
I mean, as far as taxes, like I said, each level, so like at the city level, they can pretty much tax you for whatever they feel like is necessary to run shit the way they want to run it. And then at the county level, they can only tax cities for transportation and defense and environment. And then states can do taxes on counties for defense, transportation, and environment. And then the federal is for defense and foreign relations. And so even like environmental, like there's no federal environmental policies because there's no need. Like the environment is different all across this land. So how could there be a blanket? Nope, not doing any of this. It's like you can't, I don't like that.
But what if we have different? What if we have different views on what is like I've talked about this before plenty of times when we've talked about this open thing. What if north of the Mississippi River, I have a different standard of what needs to be upkept, but it affects you? Oh, I guess then you're gonna meet at the federal.
All the people at the
at
you'd
the
be like, yo,
right?
I've got an issue to take with the people in the state
but
above
that sucks. What if this does kind of actually suck about this though?
me.
I'm at the base of the Mississippi, right? And so this is my state's problem. How do I get the states next to me and around me to care enough about my problem? Like when it really doesn't affect them at all. Like, cause now if I want to get in with Minneapolis or whoever the fuck is way up there at top, and I'm at the bottom, I have to get all these other people to like get to that high so we can settle this. And I don't know how we force all them people to like.
No. I mean, those people like the second. So let's say Texas has a problem with Colorado.
Yes.
All Texas has to do is declare that they have a problem with Colorado, and then everybody, the federal, and basically for Texas to declare that they have a problem with Colorado, all the levels beneath them have to agree, like, oh yeah, we got a problem.
They have to get that high.
And so once it gets to Texas, and Texas says, yo, just letting everybody know, we got a problem with Colorado, and then they'd be like, oh shit, federal committee's got to get together. So then everybody get together. They'd be like, all right, Texas, Let's hear what's up. What's going on? And you'd lay out your case. You'd be like, this is why Colorado's fucking me right now. And then Colorado would be like, nah, this is why what Texas is saying is bullshit, and we are totally not fucking Texas. And then everybody talk about it, and you better hope to God you were persuasive, because then they're going to vote, and they're going to say, do we think Colorado's fucking Texas? And if they say no, then you're fucked.
But if they do, then
if they do, then you're good, and they'll decide after that point
how to
what's gonna what are we gonna do to fix this. So
that's cool. And if they can't come to a consensus, then they'll
kick it to everybody.
The whole country.
Everybody will have to come together and be like, what's happening? Everybody in Florida will be like, oh man, we got to read what's happening in Colorado. Yeah. And this is the thing too. It's almost like video game checkpoints. Like if you don't tackle the problem, like if you just leave something in the federal, there's no, oh, we got multiple things going. Like nothing happens until this thing is taken care of, because the federal, it comes up, handles a thing, and then everything goes back down. So every time there's a problem, an individual problem, it has to go up. It can't be, okay, well, while we're here, let's solve the other thing too. No. There's a process.
One at a time.
It's got to keep going. One at a time. Thank you very much. And so if everybody gets stalemated and it's just like you can't get people in Florida to give a shit about your shit, and everybody else's problems are sitting in the wings waiting on the back burner.
Well, it should get solved.
It should get solved
immediately.
And this is something that I heard.
As soon as it gets down to and assuming that you go back and watch my episode before this, where I present the idea of blockchain voting, you know, like,
which is a great idea.
Yeah, like then we can all get involved with this pretty quickly, and then so things can move along. It doesn't
have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be slow.
No.
It's just it's very likely that it would be.
Well,
if people acted the way they do with our government now in this system, absolutely nothing would happen.
Well, yeah. Well, that's not necessarily true, because the people who get voted into government are going to be doing most of the things without other people. That's their job. Yeah. So
I mean, the people wouldn't be, because this is the thing, is like, this is why I was trying to tell you when you were talking about like McDonald's buying the mayor or whatever, like in all the cities, and then just getting them up the states, and that would be really hard to do, because in the elections for the people, it's not like they have to be voted in by 2/3 of everybody. But then there's other things that when they vote on them, it's not just the committee. Like taxation stuff, like taxation laws, they have to be approved by the committee and the constituents, 2/3 of each. So even if like the people are involved in a lot of the levels, then it doesn't happen.
So you don't have a mayor? You don't have a mayor and you don't pay taxes because 2/3.
No, you have to have a mayor, because if something happens, you have to bring a representative to bear.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So if you can't decide, if you can't put up a candidate that can garner 2/3 of the vote, then your mayoral process will continue until you can. And so nothing gets done in your city. And so it'll get to the point where the pain of not having a mayor is so bad that you'd elect somebody that you would rather not elect, but you need something to get done. You know what I mean? Like it stalemates for a while, but you really can only let your shit boil on, like forever. You know, like eventually you have to do something about it. Or you don't, and then I don't know how they'll, it'll be like a government shutdown for real. You know, like we're always worried when the government shuts down, and it's hard to say because everything kind of keeps running. But in my system, nothing would keep running; it would all shut down.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to know that.
Good to know, though, in your system, it's likely that there wouldn't be soldiers sitting in Iraq thinking, damn, we're about to stop getting paid.
Yeah.
In our current system, that kind of happened.
It happened real quick. Yeah. It's so far out of the realm of what I understand already. It's hard for me to envision it,
Yeah, it's pretty wacky.
Seeing like how it would work out, so it's like hard for me to predict or feel if it would be like a good or not good plan, But like I said, I definitely like the way it goes bottom up, and I do like the way it slows down the whole system, because I definitely feel you. The government is a very overactive process right now that I didn't think it needs to be.
Yeah, I think it's funny that a lot of people, especially in like the libertarian space or just anybody that's for smaller government, even they'll talk about how slow the government is to act on things. And I'm like, that's great. Like, that's the point. Like, you don't want the government acting all fucking fast, shooting from the hip on everything out here. Like, that'd be terrible. Yeah. Especially if you have ideas about the way things should be run that not a lot of people have. And so in this system, you're much more incentivized. Like if you want to be represented in your government at any level, but it starts with the city level, then you're probably going to find places that have people that think like you. And, you know, you can call them an echo chamber bubble or whatever, but
Yeah,
like
I
that's
like
what
that.
people want anyways. Like that's how we operate on the internet. Like that's how we operate in real life. Like
I think that's what you
when
want,
we're
but I don't think
comfortable,
that's the
we're able
reality
to
of
reach out. Like when you have a stable base, I think that you're able to reach out and experience new things and pull them into your life much safer than if you're just floating through everything. And so I think it's like, again, I'm kind of banking on like the goodness of man, if you will, and maybe this is like my idealism reaching in of thinking like if I leave it up to them, I feel like they'll do the right thing. And like I feel like that all the way down to like the individual level. Like I want to give, I'm like that guy from My Idiot Brother, or that movie with Paul Rudd where he's just like, he's like counting money on the bus and he's just like, here, can you hold this for a second? And he just hands this guy a wad of money or whatever. But like I wouldn't do some shit like that. But I think for the most part, I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And then if they give me reason to doubt them, I will. Like give them a chance. If they come through, then that's great. If not, deal with that afterwards. But I don't want to start having to approach people with being like, oh, this is going to be fucked up.
Okay, well, that's Max.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm good on that's interesting take on it, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure to tune in next week for
buddy.
it's
gonna be good.
into coming in hot part 3 with it.
And you can believe
Right?
that it's going to protect your rights.
You better believe that John Locke's theory of natural rights is going to be something I'd fucking touch on. You better believe.
All right, well, cool. And until then, y'all stay easy, and we'll see you then.
Peace.
Peace.